Hello there everyone, and welcome to another edition of Lydia's Crafty Corner. So today I'll be sharing with you how I've created this card. It features a embossed acetate peekaboo window, which you will then be able to open this up and then still see some stamping behind, but without the outline. So the outline's on the acetate and the rest of the stamping's on the inside of the card. So to start with, I'm going to start with a card base and a card panel, as well as a piece of acetate, all of the same size, so they're 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm then going to take the Halftone Hearts nesting die set, and I'm going to take the larger one of these dies, and I'm just going to add a little bit of glue using the Altenew tape runner to the back of it. I'm then going to take the acetate, which I'm just going to be using as a guide at the minute, and I'm going to place this onto my card panel so I can make sure that this little die that I'm going to be cutting is going to be in exactly the right place. So I'm just going to line this up where I want it on the card and then pop it down so it's nice and secure. I'm then flipping it over so I do have the cut pieces next to the card base now. This is the card panel even. And I'm just going to glue this into place so it doesn't move around. So using this die, it really does help to get the two windows that we're going to be cutting in exactly the same place. So once I've done that, I'm just going to remove the tape from the back of the card panel. Remove this. This is the piece that we need, and we don't need the inside piece, but we can keep that for a later project. I'm then going to take my card base. Again, I'm going to take that piece of acetate with the die that's attached to it already, and I'm going to line this up again. So as the acetate is the same size as the card base and the card blank that we've just done, it does help you line everything up, and you don't need to worry because it will be in exactly the same place because that die is attached to the piece of acetate. So again, I'm going to remove the washi tape that's connecting the two pieces together. It did take a little bit of time on this one. I don't know why, it was a little bit stuck, but it did come off in the end. So as you can see, when I place these two together, they do, the windows line up perfectly. So I'm going to be using the Beautiful Day stamp set. This is one of my all-time favorites, and I'm going to be using the layered images on the inside of the card. So I'm just going to make sure I've got it in the right place, and then going to open the card up, and I'm going to be doing the stamping on the inside. So for the first layer, I'm going to be using the pink pearl. So I've just inked that up, and I'm then going to stamp that into place. I'm then going to take the second layer. I'm just going to make sure it's all perfectly lined up, close the lid on my MISTI, and then I'm going to ink this one up with the Coral Bliss. So these two colours work perfectly together. They are in the same ink selection if you get them in the mini inks. So I'm just going to pop that down, and then I'm going to go for the third layer. As you can see, I have missed out the outline, but we're not going to be missing out the outline. We will be stamping that separately later on. So I've just lined that up, and then this one is the heartbeat. So this is the third in the colour selection. I'm just going to ink that up, and then I'm going to close the lid on my MISTI, and there is this part of the flower complete. I've then cut a mask, so this is just out of some masking paper. You could use some sticky notes if you wanted to, but I did have some masking paper on hand. So I've just cut that out using the die. I'm just going to place that on the top, and then I'm going to stamp the leaves. So this is the masking going to make sure that the leaves look like they're behind the flower rather than go over the stamping that we've already done. So I've inked this one up using the Minty Mint, and I will be stamping 3 of these leaves. So I haven't moved the mask in any way. I'm just going to take the stamp again of the leaves, ink them up, and then stamp them in a different position. So I do this 3 times. Again, I am using the Minty Mint. So this is the third one that I pop in. I don't know why, I always tend to do my leaves in 3s and in kind of a triangle. I think it makes it look, I don't know, it's more happier. My eye likes it a lot better when I do it in 3s. So then I'm going to pop on the second layer to these leaves. Again, I haven't moved the mask, and I'm going to be stamping the second layer using the Minty Mint. So I'm going to do all 3 of these in exactly the same way. I'm just going to line it up perfectly, close the lid on my MISTI, and then ink it up with the Sweet Leaf ink. So once I've done that, I am then able to remove the mask, and look how pretty that looks. I then have a piece of acetate. This is the same size as my card base. You could use the one that you used as your guide if you wanted to. If you did have a little bit of adhesive on it, I would just recommend taking an eraser and you will be able to take that adhesive off. So once it's nicely in place, I'm then going to use an anti-static powder tool because we're going to be doing some embossing on this. I forgot to say that this is heat resistant acetate. You are going to want heat resistant acetate to actually do the heat embossing on the acetate. So I've lined this up with the image behind. I'm stamping this onto the acetate now. So we have the acetate between the stamp and the stamped image from before. I'm just going to remove that acetate now that I've inked it up with the embossing ink, and I'm going to be using the rose gold embossing powder from Alter New. So I'm just going to tip that on. Make sure it's all off the places that I don't want it. If you do have stray pieces of embossing powder, just take a dry paintbrush and you'll be able to knock these off from where you don't want them to be. Okay, so once I've done that, I'm just going to line that piece of acetate back up directly on top of the stamped image, and then I'm going to add that mask over the top because we don't want to do the stamping of the leaves over the flower, so that's why I put the piece of masking back down. So I've just lined that up with the stamping underneath, ink that up again with the embossing ink and stamp that down. So once I've done that, I'm just going to remove that mask firstly so I don't get any warping with the mask. I'm then going to pop the embossing powder on and heat set that. So I do this again like before. I do the same process again and again, lining up the images, popping the mask into place, and then doing the leaves. You could actually do it this way that I've just done, so I'm just contradicting myself, I'm sorry. I've popped the leaf onto a position first, closed the lid on the MISTI, then popped the mask in. It doesn't really matter which way that you do it, as long as that mask is in place before you do the stamping with the embossing ink. And another note, it wouldn't really matter if you did stamp over it, as long as you did knock that embossing powder off the flower where you don't want it to be before you do the heat embossing. Once you've heated it up, that means that it's nicely set and it's not going to budge anywhere. So I'm just going to finish off this last leaf. Again, making sure that I do have that mask into place, remove the mask, then I'm going to pop the lovely, gorgeous rose gold embossing powder into place and then heat it up. And there is that bit complete. I've then closed the lid on my card to make sure that my sentiment's going to be in the right place. So I want my sentiment to be seen when I open the card up as well. So I'm just going to do this one using the jet black ink just to make sure that that sentiment is nice and bold and solid. So I've stamped that into place. So as you can see, when I do close the lid, you can see that beautiful sentiment as well as the stamping inside. Because I am going to be adhering that piece of acetate that we've just stamped and heat embossed onto this card, I am using some super sticky tape. So this is the one that I use. There are lots out there, so it's a really easy thing to get a hold of. But I do find that adhering acetate is a little bit more tricky than adhering cardstock because it's not non-porous. So I find that this works really well for me. So I'm just going to remove the backing off these. I'm only removing the corners just to make sure that I can get it lined up before it does adhere down, because this is a super sticky tape. You want to be a little bit more careful with it. So as you can see, I'm lining my images up first, and once I've got them into place perfectly, I'm then going to remove the backing just by sliding the super sticky backing tape off. So I'm going to make sure it's all nicely lined up, and then I'm going to stick it down. Once that's adhered, you can then open it up and you can see that the beautiful stamping is behind as well as in front. So I really do like this look. But as we've used the acetate, we can see that adhesive. So the reason why we cut the panel before was to cover all of this adhesive now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some more super sticky tape to the front of my card. And then I'm going to place the panel that we cut into place and then remove the sticky tape. Again, I've just got rid of it from the corners so I can then slide out the tape later on, so I can make sure that this panel is in perfect position before it does get stuck down completely. And there is the card complete. I love how you can see the beautiful stamping inside of the card and outside of the card as well. So it does give a really different and beautiful look to this. You could use this technique with many different stamp sets, as long as the stamp set does have an outline and a solid image to do the stamping with. Otherwise, you could stamp the image on the inside, colour that in, and then do the outline on the acetate window. So that's it for me for today. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that you've enjoyed the video. And if you do and don't want to miss out on anything that we do upload to the channel, it would be great if you do subscribe. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again really, really soon. Bye-bye.